brand strategy enablement. The outcome. This includes marketing and sales, change management, activation and emotional connection, integrated communication across all stakeholders. Our agency side is all about execution and delivery, the output. From concept development, creative execution, narrative and lexicon development, advertising and brand asset creation, infrastructure setup and support of the digital backbone for communication, right through to provisioning the tools and tactics to your audiences according to their consumption preferences, generational relevance both internally and externally. We build confidence in your brand through your people using our proprietary, tried and tested framework comprising 5 focus areas. Development of purpose. It's about who you are, better known as the discipline of branding, and it is internally focused. Creation of activation opportunities for your audience to connect emotionally and experience what you do, commonly known as marketing and sales. Externally focused. We build a bridge between who you are and what you do for your people through self-awareness of every action undertaken. Hold a mirror up to yourself to reflect through focus groups, research and sentiment analysis to ensure continuous improvement. Surrounded by continuous, relevant, credible communication to all stakeholders. Our credentials. Get on over to our website. You'll find more about us, our latest offerings, our portfolio of works, resources from ebooks, vlogs, and thought leadership pieces. Great. So the first poll I want to share today is just what, if anything, do you fear about writing? I'm sure you've all in a position where you've had to write a communique of some sort, either to inform staff or to share information. And what is it, if anything, do you fear about writing? If you could respond to that quick poll, I'd really appreciate it. I'll give you a few minutes to do so, or a minute to do so. It's not actually that lengthy. If you could just respond to it, we'd be really appreciative. We'll give you the results from the quick poll towards the end of the presentation. There is another poll as well, so we'll combine the two. Thanks, guys. If you could just answer that. Okay. I'm going to continue, and because this first part really just gives you some understanding of how we go about it. So the new normal is really deep oceans, blue seas, whichever way you want to put it. And we've sort of got the old way of doing things, and then we're looking at what we might do differently moving forward. So just to give you some insight into what we were thinking, you know, I think previously, when there's internal comms that needs to go out, everybody kind of like thinks, we'll give it to the internal communications department, they'll write the message, it's not our job. And I think that's changed because of the workplace changing, and there's a distance between people. If you want a communication to go out now, I really think to a large extent, you're the one who's writing it. And not only are you the one who's writing it, you have to create a meaningful message for your specific audience. And I think that's important. You know, messaging will not fly or land if it doesn't mean anything to the person reading it. So the way in which we construct our presentations is we'll give you some context, and then we'll give you 4 key things that we think you should focus on in order to improve your messaging to your audiences. So I'm going to give you the 4 things now, and then I'm going to go into the context, and then I'm going to unpack the 4 different elements. So the 4 different elements, and I'm not giving a writing lesson today, just so that you understand. It's more around how do you take a message and make it relevant to the audience that you're speaking in it, and to create meaning for that audience. And why would you want to create meaning for that audience? Is because you want to generate some kind of feeling, because that feeling invokes an action. So people will then actually maybe do something differently, or they might react to what you're saying. And so that's really the process. So I'm going to take you through the 4 key elements quickly, and they're really around context. what is the context and that you're writing this message in. Then it's around, it's content. What is the content? What is the message you have to share? Then it's context. And the reason I actually had them context and then content, but I swapped them because so many times people come and they say to us they want to write a communication, and we always say to them, what do you want to say and who do you want to say to? And then there's silence. So it's important that you understand what it is that you're wanting to share, who you're wanting to share it with. And then you have to look at the context. And in what context will you be sharing that message? And then you'll look at the construct. How do you construct the message so it actually has got a format where people can understand and you don't start at the end and end up in the beginning and get all confused? And ultimately what you're aiming for is meaning, and why is meaning important? And if you get all these things correct, then you've landed your message. So let's just go into some of the contextualization now before I unpack these further. The audience that I'm speaking to today is basically everybody, because you can apply this to a single message, or you can apply this if you're the communications person at an organization, or if you're the communication officer in a large bank or wherever. But my main audience really is to look at people who are working in communications and just some of the things that they battle with. So when you look at messaging, this is the type of messaging any business has. They want to share their financial results. They want to talk about their expansion plans. They want to talk about their departmental performances, and worse still, every department wants to talk about their performance. And they've realized that if they hang their success onto something, then they might get recognized. A key member has resigned. There's new people starting. What is the company's vision? Who's been appointed? What is the mission? You know, and it just goes on. Who are our competitors and who's taking work away from us, and how can we stop that from happening? What are the new training schedules out there? And as you can see, you know, the communication officer is getting bombarded by all this stuff, but so is the audience. And the audience is the various people who are receiving this, and they're actually really not interested in who's resigned, perhaps, or they might be. You know, so it's really, how do you take this and make this relevant? Because that's the most important thing. It's how do you make this relevant to various people that you're going to speak to. So in a business environment, it's actually not as difficult as what it sounds, but there's some tricks that you need to understand. So the first trick is that almost all of these messages can be compartmentalized into 4 different categories. It's all about the people in the business. So it's the training courses that are available to them, the appointments, the vacancies, the resignations, overtime or short time, all of those things. Then there's the progress. What progress have we made against plans? What progress has the company made? What are new initiatives that we're starting? Then there are plans and policies, and those are your vision and your change management and your mission and where we're heading and all the rest that you also want to understand. And then there's things like profitability. So, you know, are we appealing to our shareholders at the moment? Is our share price increasing or decreasing? So if you look at that, there's really 4 key categories, and that makes messaging a lot easier for a couple of reasons. Every message that comes in and that needs to be disseminated, as a reader, you want to understand where this fits into the bigger picture. Otherwise, you've just got all this stuff coming at you. And as one of our clients once said to us, and I'll never forget it, they said, people are always just vomiting communication over us. It sounds a bit crude, but I think that that's how it feels. So these are the 4 different categories that you can segment all your information into. And why would we want to do that? Because each one of these categories is relevant to different people, relevant to different departments, has got level of urgency or frequency around it that is maybe not there for others. And all of those things need to be taken into account when you plan your messaging calendar. So once we've slotted all the information into these different categories, there's something called a relevance funnel. And this is the next element, that you take this raw message which you've now got, which might be about values or whatever it is. You now need to take it and say, well, how do I align this to the organization's purpose or its brand promise or its tagline? So FNB, we help you whatever the tagline is or whatever the brand promise is, or your purpose. How do you align that key message, whatever nature it is, whether it's the vision or the mission or whatever it is, how do I align that to the purpose and make sure that it now has meaning? Because in a lot of cases, it doesn't have meaning. It's really just a message that's out of context because it's not aligned to the organizational purpose. So if your organization doesn't have a clear purpose and everybody doesn't understand it, you can already see there's a gap. Then it needs to align to the current climate in your organization, and that is around the water we're swimming in. What is happening in the organization? What is happening in the macro view of the world and of the country? Because that's important. If you don't actually align your message to that, you may come in left field and people will think, what on earth was that there for? Then you've got your target audience, and here you need to be very clear that you segment it so that you don't create overload and people feeling overwhelmed with all the messaging. So the target audience should be, is it relevant to that audience? So if you haven't segmented your audience and you're trying to just do a spray and pray, you're going to lose a lot of readership because people are just not interested in things that don't concern them. You know, a while ago, and that's why I opened with saying that communication has changed so much. If you look at yourself as an individual, when you go onto the internet now, you are presented with a plethora of information every time you open the internet or every time you go to an article. And a lot of it is not relevant to you, and you just find it a huge annoyance and you move away from where that is. And we don't want that to happen when you're trying to communicate with your teams or your employees within your organization. You want to make sure that the person you're speaking to will find this information relevant. And the relevance of that is, by and large, the current climate. It's also the alignment to purpose. And you have to make sure that you're speaking to the right person. Because if I want to tell somebody about dog food and they don't have a dog, we've missed the plot. So this is quite important as well. Then we need to create meaning. And we'll do a video right at the end, which is going to show you the relevance of creating meaning. Because when things are meaningful for the individual, they then feel something and it evokes an emotion, and emotion leads to action. And often that's what you're wanting. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to establish recall. If people can't even remember the message that you've shared with them, how are they ever going to enact it or do something with it? So establishing recall is often done through interesting graphics, through interesting pictures, through interesting storytelling, through interesting anecdotes, etc. So that's another important element, which is really how do we establish recall? And then the last thing, believe it or not, the last thing is the distribution channel. And that's how am I going to reach these individual people? If you think about communications in most organizations, the first thing they start to talk about is the distribution channel. They will say to you, I want this to go out on this distribution channel or that distribution channel, as opposed to finding out how they can make their message more relevant, how they can make it land with the right audience, how do they make sure that it's contextualized so that people get and grasp that meaning straight away. They immediately go to distribution channel. And in fact, that's the last thing we look at. Because once we've got the message and we know who we're wanting to speak to, we then understand on which channel we want to put it. We can then tweak the layout of the information so that it'll fit onto that channel and present with relevance as we're looking for it. So when you look at this, what goes in is a whole lot of messaging categorized into those different categories. And what comes out on the other side is meaning. And then you've got a successful message. And I think that's really important. Okay, so these are the 4 categories that we want to just talk to quickly. The first one being the content. And we just want to have a look and say, you know, what are the key criteria around the content? So what do you want your audience to think, feel, and do after reading the message? And I think that's important. If you land up at the end of that message and you think, oh, Well, I don't know. It's not clear to me what they should think, feel, or do. Why do you think they'll understand that? So make sure you build that into what you're wanting to say. The next thing is check the validity of the content. Don't have fake news. And it's a news thing that everybody's talking about, but it's an age-old problem. So, and why do you want to ensure that? Because if you have not got information which is correct and accurate and is enacted upon in the way in which you say it is, you'll break trust. And when you break trust, it's very difficult to get it back, and all of a sudden the publication or the channel or the leadership is deemed non-credible, and that's an issue because it's difficult to get that credibility back again. You have to work twice as hard. The next thing really is start with the point you're trying to make. Don't end with it, and the end can reinforce it, and that's fine. So you find that, I find a lot of people give me information and they want to explain how they got to the conclusion they got to. So all the information in the front is all a lot of, for want of a better word, waffle. And then right at the end of it, you find the point they're wanting to make. But by then you've lost your reader. So make the point that you're wanting to make, then add onto it with themes and sub-themes and different information, etc. And that's vitally important as well. So an upside down pyramid is what we refer to then. Start with the stuff which is the foundation of the message, the relevant fact that you want everybody to read. If you only get them to read that one paragraph, you've done a lot. If they want to read more and they want to understand more, that's fantastic too, but at least they've got the key message that you want. So that's another thing that you need to look at. And then you need to be mindful of your tone. And I think this is important from the point of view, people don't understand what we talk about when we say be mindful of your tone. So in previous presentations, we've shown you that 7% of the words that you use contribute to a conversation or an interaction. So tone is quite difficult to write into text, but it is possible. So I'll give you an example. So don't write, I do not believe there is anyone else in the company capable of solving this problem. Because that's a tone which speaks to arrogance, annoyance, superiority. Instead saying, perhaps my particular background could be useful in solving this problem. There's a huge difference. There's a tone of courtesy and sincerity to build goodwill as opposed to a tone of I'm better than everybody else. So consider the words and phrases you use. And I've said this a number of times and I'm going to say it again. Words are like spells or magic. They cast spells. Okay, so really be careful of the words you use. Another thing that we often see people saying is things like, you obviously didn't read the instructions carefully, which is why the system shut down. Instead of saying something like, sometimes an installation error can automatically cause the system to shut down. They're not inflammatory or incendiary comments, they're just comments which are factual. So if you want to have a tone in your business, which is one of you're allowed to make a mistake, because it's only through making mistakes that innovation is actually prevalent in organizations, have a tone and a register when you send out communication that mirrors that. If you don't, you might well end up in a situation where people find they get put off by your communications and they really don't want to know about it. So that's a bit about the content. So just consider those 4 things when we talk about content. The next thing is a bit about the context, and I want to show you something here so that you understand what I'm talking about. So if I had to show you this 9 months ago, you would have thought, what on earth is that about? And the moment when I show you that, what you now see, or what goes on in your mind, in your heart, in your head, to a large extent is, this is the new Avengers, and here they're coming to save us. Because that's how we feel about them. They are our frontline soldiers in the war. They are our angels that have saved us. But it's very different. So that context is really important. And this context is in a macro environment, because this is going on around the world. So at the moment, this context is macro. But imagine if you were sending a communication to somebody in America, and this was only happening in South Africa, and you started referring to this, people would not understand what on earth you're on about unless you provided them with context. So here's another one, and really, what would this have meant to you 6 months ago? If somebody had put together this picture and sent it as part of a mailer or something, it would have meant absolutely nothing, but now it means a lot. Again, this is now micro environment as well. So we've got macro and micro environment. So what's going on in the world and the country that you live in, as well as the company you work in. And I think that's important. So have that context bubble around it. So when I talk the water we swim in, what is going on in the water around that fish? Okay, is it dirty, green and slimy? Is it clear and blue, and have they got clear views? And so that's really important. So here's another few examples, because they're just so beautiful at this point in time. I can't resist them. So if you had to see this, would you think that this is related to COVID and somebody who's got it and can't breathe? No, of course you wouldn't. You would know that that is part of the Black Lives Matter. That is also going across the entire world like wildfire. So, you know, that context is really important. It's important so that you don't make a blunder and put out a communique that is not sensitive to what is happening in the macro environment or the micro environment, but it's also important from the point of view to make sure that you can align to it. So if you're launching a well-being campaign at the moment for your staff, there's a good reason for it, and you can actually get a lot out of it by talking about it at this point in time. Here's another one that I couldn't resist putting up there. And just imagine, what would you have thought about this 6 months ago, and what do you think now? If you had to see this picture completely out of context, not having gone down this journey, and you saw this, you would have think, what is the man doing? It's not even our flag. You know, so I think understand that context is absolutely vitally important. And then closer to home in the work environment, what is this to you? This is the new normal. This is, you know, and I still see so many articles going out talking about the workplace. What is the workplace at the moment? This is what your new workplace looks like, isn't it? Good thing we can only see up to here. I've seen some horror pictures of people with suits and jocks, and you know, and I know for a couple of occasions I've managed to sit for an entire day without changing shoes and having my slippers on, and it's absolutely wonderful in winter because it's warm. But this is the new normal, and this is not out of context to you. If I'd shown you this 5 months ago, it would have been. So it's really important to understand that context and what does that mean to the individual that you're speaking about. So context is really important, and I think it's something that you just need to consider in all instances when you are looking at how you construct your information. All right, the next thing that I want us to go to is when you're constructing that information. I just want to get this one. When you're constructing that information, sorry, I got myself. You need to understand how to put together the, and like me, who's just gone and got myself lost in my own presentation. I've got content, and then I've given you the context in which you're doing it, and now I'm going to look at the construct for you. How do you put that together so that it means something to someone? So imagine that you're an alien, and you are not, you're not familiar with Earth. And I said to you, okay, I want you to send a message to somebody in South Africa, in Gauteng, who would be completely lost. You would not understand what I was speaking about. So think about Google Earth, because to me that's a really brilliant way of demonstrating construct. So when you have a look at it and you put in Google Earth, you want to understand firstly, you know, it's in South Africa, then it's in Johannesburg, then where do you go from there? You can find the next part, which might be a street name or I think in this case we've used a shopping centre, so we've used Nickelway. But we're drilling down closer and closer, and you get to see the environment around you. So it's like a helicopter view, and then you're zooming in. The construct of your information should look similar. So if you present somebody with an entire 20-page document, where do they start? What do they read? Or do they just do like a book and read the front cover and the last 2 pages and make the story up that goes in between? the construct is vitally important from the point of view that every single message has got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think that that is so important, whether you're doing a report, whether you're doing a message, whether you're doing a newsletter for somebody, the construct is absolutely critical to achieving a message that has successfully landed. So at this stage, you would have seen on a lot of, and websites are so good at that. They take you through the process. You can say, okay, I want to find out this about that information, and you'll drill down, and then I want to find out some more about their services, and you'll drill down, or I want to go and have a look at some of their resources, but it's all presented to you in a way that is easy to read. So how does your organization's information present? Does it come to you in one big chunk, or can you actually say, well, I'm sitting in the marketing division, I want to understand marketing information. I'm not frontline staff, I'm more interested in what the company is doing to create experience for the client. Can you actually go and pinpoint and get straight to what you're interested in? Because that's how relevance works. And if you don't have that, people lose interest because it's not relevant to them. So the sort of last thing that I want to cover now is, and there's a bit more than this, but I want to talk about meaning. Why is meaning so important? And I've got a interesting video that I want to share with you. So this is a chap called Dan Heath. He works with the Duke's University in the States.
The problem, though, is that knowledge rarely leads to change.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean, for instance, take the warning labels on most cigarette packs. Here's one. The cigarettes release carbon monoxide. I mean, do we think that the problem is that smokers simply don't know that cigarettes are bad for them? This isn't a knowledge problem. And the same's true for lots of other behaviors. I mean, right now, there are thousands of parents across the country trying to get their kids to understand why a tattoo may be a bad idea. The problem is when knowledge competes with coolness, you know who's going to win that one. Same goes for organizational change. When we want our employees to move in a new direction, our first instinct is to educate them. We want to bring them all together and step through a 72-slide PowerPoint presentation. John Cotter, the organizational change guru from Harvard, says that most people have a mental model that change happens in 3 stages. We present careful analysis, and that causes people to change their thinking, which leads to behavior change. But he says in his experience, that's almost never the way it happens. That in his experience, it happens in a different 3-stage process. People see something that makes them feel something that gives them the fuel to change. So if you want people to change, you've got to put feeling first. Let's go back to the cigarette packs for a sec, because there are other countries that actually do a much better job at connecting with emotion. So here's a pack in Italy, for instance. The translation of that is smoking kills. In Canada, they even push it a step further. They put photos on their packs like this one. Ugh. I mean, you may want that cigarette, but you catch a glimpse of those teeth and it gives you a second thought. What about this one? I think this is genius. You know, which one do we think is going to be better for the 17-year-old male psyche? The knowledge that cigarette smoking releases carbon monoxide, or that this could happen to you?
So I think that's an interesting little clip just to demonstrate to you how people need to have meaning of something and to feel something so that they then will react on it. And if that meaning is not there, you don't get the feeling and then you don't get the reaction. And I think that gives you some understanding of what is important and what is not important when you're creating messaging. I think the other thing that is also vitally important is to ensure that when you create the messaging, you give it to people in a frequency that is acceptable. So what I've got here is you know, when you give people a whole lot of information, give it to them so they understand that this is breaking news. This is stuff that you have to read. It's imperative for you to read this. And if you don't, you know, you are going to land up putting your foot in it in your business. You might not say the right thing when you get in front of clients, etc. So try and segment messaging into categories of importance, and that would change for each business, but the importance is quite a good one. So you want something which is breaking news. Your leadership need to know, they need to know about that so that they can share it with others. The next one would then be something like, what is the news in the business? Is it about the business? And it's your problem to keep yourself informed. So the rest is you need to understand the rest of what is happening in the business, maybe not immediately, but you do need to keep yourself informed. So maybe you would have two categories. You would have a business news category and you would have a breaking news category. And so you could then take that whole funnel of messaging once you've shaped it, and you can put it into these things so that people know when they go and look at their messaging, whatever your landscape looks like, these are urgent ones, these I can catch up with in a week, and that if I never read it, that's okay. So the last category here might be something like this, which is the back page. It's social and it's in your own time. A lot of people have Yammer, they have Jam, they have things which give you that social information. And that's also important though, because that's also a feedback loop for the people within the organization, so that you understand what the conversations are in the organization and you know whether your messages have landed or not. So all of those are really important elements to understand when you're trying to create meaningful messaging. Make sure you give it to people at the right point in time and that they have got a clear understanding of how this fits into the business. So I just want to check the time. Yeah, we've still got some time. The other element is that when you create the message, a lot of people think that if you create a message, it's just easy, you just write. So that first poll question I asked you is, what do you fear most about writing? And a lot of people always say a blank piece of paper. I don't understand what to start with. How do I start my message? And so one of the things that we've got that you can look at is this, and it's really a typical mind map, you know. So what is the main topic that you're wanting to discuss? Let's say it's how COVID has affected your business. What is the subtopic? It's about the office space, and can I take my PC home now as well as my chair because I'm uncomfortable? What is the subtopic? You know, how does that affect my children running into the office while I'm on a call? So you can see how what you need to really do is to create a mind map for a message. Now, a lot of people think, oh, that's a lot of work to put into a message. But if you really want your message to have meaning and to make a difference, this is what you need to do. Especially if it is quite a complex message, because you're speaking to a lot of different people who have got a lot of different ideas about a lot of things. So I think it's important that you just make sure when you plan your messaging, you plan it according to these various different things that we've spoken to. So if you'll recall, they're about making sure that you've got content. What is your content about? Where does it fit? What category does it fit into? And so what is it that you need to talk about? So if you're going to talk about, let's say you're going to talk about well-being. Why is that important? Because it's related to the people in your business. And who are the people in your business? Well, they are actually your business. So you can actually relate it back and you can give it content. And then you need to look at the construct. How do I construct it so that people can get the information, just as we did in Google Earth, where we actually got the top level information, and then we could drill down further and further if we wanted more and more information. If we'd already read it, then that's fine. Then the context side is, how do I have a look at my macro environment, go down to my micro environment, which would be South Africa or maybe the company. How do I take it down different levels so that I'm not speaking left of field and I'm not being insensitive to something which is happening? And then meaning, which is what we just went through now. How do you create meaning so that people understand and they feel something about that message that you gave them? Remember, what do you want people to think, feel, and do? And then they can act, because if they feel, they will react or act. So I want to do another quick poll, and this is around, do you think some of these concepts would improve your organization's internal communication, or do you think your internal communication in your organization is spot on? So if you could maybe answer that for me, I'd be really grateful. I'll give you a minute or so just to do that. Cool, so let me just give you some information on really what success would look like. If you get your communications down to a T and your messaging, all of it is aligned to the target audience, it's relevant, it's within the context of your organization and the context of the country. The construct is so that people can get to the information they want to get to quickly. What would success look like? Well, the first thing you would have is you would have a great working environment, because there wouldn't be the chatter that always goes on, and now you won't have it at the water cooler. I suppose you'll have it on WhatsApp, but it would be, did you hear so-and-so said this? No, I didn't. My manager said this, and there's conflict. You don't want that type of conflict. So there would be a great working environment. You would also have a shared understanding, and that provides meaning, and it provides joint meaning, and I think that's really vital. Joint meaning is important, and it's what makes organizations fly. You would also have a common language. Everybody would understand the context of a certain element that you're having a discussion, and the talk in the business would be about the business, and that's really important. And all of that would lead to improved productivity. And improved productivity is obviously what everybody wants. They all want the business to do more, achieve more, and not, everybody always looks at that and says, oh, because you just want to make more money. No, if your business has a purpose, which is to help people or to provide a service to people, then that is not just about making money. The fact that you get paid for providing that service, well, that's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's just how many people can you provide the service to, and if you do a good job, they will be very grateful and very happy to pay you. And so that would be what success looks like if you get that right. And then, you've got curtain up and it's smooth sailing, and your messages will land. So I think I can hand over to Charles. I'll see how far he is with the quick poll results. He's just compiling those results, and then he'll pop them on screen for us.
Okay, thank you, Linda. For the quick poll results, poll number 1, what, if anything, do you fear about writing? I think the audience could resonate with what you were saying earlier today, Linda. A blank piece of paper can be daunting and frightening, but a lack of knowledge of the topic seems to be the overwhelming concern. A blank page is about a quarter of the respondents are worried about that, and the others are making sure they're knowledgeable on the topic. Then secondly, the quick poll number 2, do you think these concepts would improve your organization's internal communication? There's a resounding agreement on that, Linda, so well done. Everyone responded yes to that. Then moving on, I just want to thank you all for attending today's session. Our next session will be on the 16th of July. Overcoming leadership hesitance is what we're going to be discussing then. I'd like you all to consider joining us for that live streaming. And as announced earlier today as well, we'll be streaming that across 4 channels, being YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Microsoft Teams. So welcome to join us in any particular one of those that you would like to. So yeah, live streaming is something that we're trying to get into, to understand better and to perform better at. So we're confident that the presentations would get better and better, and the ease of access would be greatly improved as well, we feel, by using these alternative channels. But let us know what you think with the post-event survey that we'll be sending out, and whether you feel that you would prefer to continue with just on using Microsoft Teams, or whether you're comfortable to use other platforms as well. So just to take you through our website and what you will find, we've got a live streaming page where we explain why we're doing what we're doing, and the different links to the different social media channels are available for you to use. Just a quick click of a button will take you to the appropriate channel, and then scrolling down on the page a bit, you'll see that we've got individual sign-in URLs for the different Teams sessions. On the Teams platform, we need to have unique URLs that you would use for each session. So you would just click on the appropriate button at the time of the webinar starting to sign into the Teams platform. You can sign in either anonymously or you can sign in by using your name. It's totally up to you. So other than that, I think that's it, Linda. Over to you to close. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye from my side.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. And if we had some blunders today, it's our first time that we're streaming across 4 channels, and I must be honest with you, that's been a bit of a challenge for us, but we'll get there. Even despite all the testing, there will always be, and that's part of the new normal, I would think. So next time we'll be better at it. But thank you so much for attending, and I hope that was useful to you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day further and keep warm. It's going to be a cold weekend. Thank you.